Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2, and today I'm going to be showing you guys a build that I've wanted to make pretty much ever since I saw that this ability existed in the game, and that is a one-shot hammer Clawbringer build. Not only can this build obviously one-shot bosses with just the hammer, which is like super fun, but it can also do a completely ridiculous amount of melee damage, as well as still having super strong gun damage so you can mob really quickly, as well as kill bosses with some guns. My main goal with this build was to be able to make the hammer one-shot pretty much everything in the game, which I didn't think was possible at first, but after I ended up getting all the gear, I was actually able to near one-shot the raid bosses with the hammer, which I was like extremely happy about. I went to sleep super excited about the build, and then I woke up to an absolutely devastating nerf to the awe skill, which drastically reduced how good the build is. Don't worry though, the build is still incredibly strong and it will one-shot pretty much any boss in the game that isn't the raid bosses. You can still kill the raid bosses pretty quickly, it's just not nearly as fast as I used to be able to, which is a bit unfortunate, but as you can see, the damage is still super crazy and there's honestly nothing more fun than throwing the hammer and seeing it just destroy everything. And for most things that you're doing in the game, the build is like completely perfect for. Like always, there will be a save file for this build in my Discord server, and at the end of the video, there's some extra gameplay of me using the build in a level 20 Chaos Chamber run. If you guys would like to see my updated Flak 2.0 build video that still shreds even after the nerfs, please drop a like on the video or leave a comment down below so that I know that you guys are interested. With all that out of the way, let's get right into the build. It's really late at night right now, so sorry, no camera. I'll do my best to just speed through everything so you guys don't get too bored. First off, I want to talk about gear because that is very, very important for this build. Like I mentioned, the main thing that we're trying to do with this build is to make the hammer do as much damage as possible. So of course we're using Storm Dragon's Judgment. We'll go over the skill tree in a minute here, so don't need to worry about that. We're going to be using Storm Dragon's Judgment because that's the main thing that I want to do with this build, is to be able to just throw the hammer and do as much damage as humanly possible. So what actually enables the hammer to do so much damage is using the Spell Blade. What the Spell Blade does is, if you look at it by default on the Storm Dragon Judgment, it says that the Fate Maker summons a hammer dealing lightning melee damage to all enemies it touches. So this is by default going to scale off of melee damage. Now if you get a Spell Blade, Spell Blades are going to change your melee attacks to deal spell damage, but that's actually kind of a lie. It ends up being spell damage as well as melee damage. So what this ends up doing is it makes your Storm Dragon Judgment scale off of spell damage as well as melee damage, which is pretty obvious then why we spec Spellshot, to get as much spell damage as possible, and then you can convert all that extra spell damage into even more melee damage with a Paradigm class mod. This will also affect the ability damage to help it do a bit more damage, which is certainly nice because the Storm Dragon Judgment does do some ability damage. So ultimately, you are gaining basically melee damage, ability damage, and spell damage, all just by stacking spell damage, which is then going to make your Dragon Judgment do a whole bunch of damage when you use this class mod. Without having a Spell Blade or this class mod that is going to, it's called a Paradigm, that's going to increase your melee and ability damage by 50% of your spell damage, the build is kind of gutted. So you want to get these two things immediately, and then everything else is not nearly as impactful, and the build will be incredibly strong literally just by default, just with like within the skill trees and stuff like that, which of course I'll talk about. So definitely just make sure to get those things, and then the rest of it is purely just for optimization. Alright, so talking about the skill tree, obviously we're doing Clawbringer and Spellshot. The Spellshot is for, like mentioned before, getting all the additional spell damage increases to then scale the Spellblade damage, which is then going to give your Storm Dragon Judgment a whole bunch of extra damage. So in terms of what we're going to actually be doing in the Clawbringer tree, first off I'll talk about the Awe nerf. So previously Awe was giving us, instead of multiplicative crit like everything in the game, it was giving us flat crit. So let's say that my crit is 10%. Awe used to make it go from 10% to 76%. At least with, you know, having +3 in the class mod. Otherwise it would be 33% crit chance, which was very, very good. Now that 66% is multiplicative, so if I have 10% and then I get another 66%, that's going to make it go up to 16%. So not nearly as powerful as it used to be. It's still pretty good, but I don't even know if it's worth having it on a class item anymore, but regardless, we'll talk about class item in a bit. In terms of the skill tree, you want Oath of Fire to just give you some additional gun damage. A lot of the stuff in the Clawbringer tree isn't all that good, so we'll just talk about what is actually good. You'll get the extra gun damage from Oath of Fire here. You get extra elemental damage from Dragon Aura. Oath of Thunder is pretty mandatory, just going to give you additional bonus lightning damage whenever you do a melee, which is really good. I have 30%, but this is going to be 25% if you don't have 1 point into Oath of Thunder via class mod. I have 3 points into Rebuke for just some additional damage reduction. I have 1 point into Storm Breath, just for the extra 12% damage reduction there. And then I have Firebolt for the 8% gun damage, and then 3 points into Awe, plus the 3 from the class item that I have, which is still pretty good because it gives us crit damage. And even though the crit chance is multiplicative, it's still fairly good because by default we have like 18% melee crit chance, which isn't all that bad. So scaling that up is still certainly helpful. In Spellshot, I have Spell Crit, literally no reason. I don't think this actually is doing anything. I was kind of just testing it, so probably wouldn't put points into Spell Crit. Magic Bullets just to increase your spell damage, or just to increase your gun damage via spell damage. I have this for the additional reload speed for whatever weapon we're using. However, you could very easily swap the Spell Sniper into Just Warming Up to gain additional fire rate so that you do more damage with whatever gun you're using. Font of Mana, the main part of this is just to keep my Buffmeister up more often and also to have lower cooldown on the hammer. The hammer cooldown ends up being pretty low, but this is just helpful regardless. And then I have Glass Cannon, which is just going to remove the ability to automatically gen my ward, but it'll still give me 30% spell damage. If you want more survivability, feel free to just take this off and put on Mage Armor. Then of course we have High Thread Count to just increase our overall spell weaving stack so we get more spell damage. And then we have 1 slot 1 kill to gain even additional gun damage. Again, you could swap out the Spell Sniper for Just Warming Up or Warcaster. That's probably what I'll do before I do the gameplay segment, because I actually want to try out my gun with Warcaster. For the hero stats, you want to absolutely max out your crit damage. The crit chance, as far as my testing goes, only counts for spells, so it's worthless with this. And then I just went full into spell cooldown, and then a little bit of points into skill cooldown to have my hammer up more often. The spell cooldown is primarily just to have Buffmeister up more. If you want to use your hammer even more often, you can put it into skill cooldown, but it isn't all that worth it because we get a lot of skill cooldown naturally, and the cooldown is very low regardless, so I just like having Buffmeister up more often. In terms of the rest of the gear, God, I absolutely hate this UI bug. I tried to reload my game to make it go away. I barely even have anything in my inventory, but whatever. Let's talk about weapons. So we are stacking as much lightning damage as possible because our Storm Dragon Judgment is going to be lightning. So as such, we of course have a lightning spellblade here, and then any other weapon you want to use. The 2 weapons that I'd suggest is a live wire, because this is going to enable, whenever you use a melee, it's going to also proc the live wire effect, the little lightning chains, which is really good. And also the live wire is particularly pretty good when mobbing. And then the other weapon I would recommend is a Pixie. This is not only going to completely destroy bosses, because you end up getting a lot of extra damage with this, because you're stacking so much spell damage, and the Pixies scale off of both spell and companion damage. They're also just really, really good overall. I'd highly recommend getting a Lightning Pixie, and also a live wire. You could alternatively try to use the brand new assault rifle. I unfortunately haven't gotten one yet, but if you want to use that, feel free to, but any lightning weapon will be perfectly fine. I have a extra fire weapon in my inventory because the way that awe works, little side tangent here, the way that awe works is that it's only going to proc from direct damage. So you know how you do the extra 20% bonus fire damage with just by default? So awe is going to proc off of fire damage and lightning damage, right? But if I just shoot my gun that is lightning damage, it's only going to proc the secondary effect of awe, even though I gain the extra fire damage here. That secondary fire damage is just going to count as secondary, so it's not a primary source, meaning that it's not going to proc both forms of awe. Hopefully that isn't too confusing. That's why I have a fire weapon just whenever I'm at a boss. I swap to it to proc the additional crit damage, and then I swap to my lightning weapon to proc the crit chance. Your Wyvern does do direct fire damage in the form of its ability attacks and stuff, so it will proc the initial effect of awe, but the likelihood of it is fairly low. The Wyvern is kind of trolling half the time, just flying around not doing anything. But a lot of the time you'll notice that you'll be missing that crit damage, which is a bit unfortunate. Hopefully it ends up working with Oath of Fire or something else like that. It doesn't even work with Buffmeister. It has to be a direct source of damage, which is why I just have some random fire weapon. And then I have a Masterwork Handbow, literally just to get spell weaving stacks up as much as possible. If you wanted to have an even better bossing potential, you could get a Furior that is also a Hydra. Throw down Hydras, then throw down Pixies, and you'll kill bosses a little bit faster that way. In terms of the rest of our gear, like I mentioned earlier, we're using a Buffmeister. You want to be using a Lightning one. The Buffmeister is very important because you can get Bonk and Zap, which is each respectively going to increase your melee damage and your spell damage significantly. And the spell damage is of course massive because we are converting all of that spell damage via our class item. So a Buffmeister is incredibly important here, and I would not recommend using any other sort of spell, and you want it to have Bonk and Zap. Alternatively, you could get Ka-Chow, but Ka-Chow will not be nearly as good as the Bonk and Zap combo because of the paradigm. In terms of what you want on your class item, I don't think that mine is ideal here. I got it because it's Clawbringer main, so it's going to increase the damage of our Lightning Hammer, but it doesn't increase it by all that much. It seems to only increase the ability effect rather than the direct damage hit, so that's not all that great. This is mainly just for the +3 awe, but I don't know if that's ideal anymore after the awe nerf, so I don't know, take that what you will. There's an alternative of this where you can get one that is Spellshot power and Clawbringer power, I believe, that has, I think it has awe on it too. That would probably be better because the Spellshot power will increase your spell damage, but I have a god roll here of this roll, so I'm using that with melee damage and spell damage. You could also get any class item that gives you a high thread count within the spell weaving tree would probably be pretty good as well, because I would increase your spell damage, which would then of course increase your melee and ability damage. The main thing here is just that you get a paradigm, and then you want it to have melee damage, spell damage, and all damage dealt. Alternatively, instead of one of those, you could get area damage. I think that works with the hammer as well. For your shield, I always use a Cursed Wit. You actually have two options here. If you want more survivability, you can use a Bad Egg. This thing actually gives 35% extra melee damage, which is very good. Ultimately, though, it doesn't seem to be nearly as good as Cursed Wit, because Cursed Wit is just 100% extra damage, so that's what I'm going to be using. But if you want more survivability, feel free to use the Bad Egg. Also gives you some movement speed, which isn't too bad either. In terms of the necklace, so this one you want to have lightning damage and Spellshot power, because the Spellshot power is going to give you additional spell damage, which is really nice. And then you can get a massive 26% all damage dealt, which is just super OP. And then on the bottom text here, I have Fate Maker crits increase companion crit, and then inversely companion crits increase crit damage. And this works with the pixies, so if my pixies get a crit, then it's going to increase my crit damage, which is pretty good because I like to use the pixies, and especially for bosses this helps out with your damage a ton. Alternatively, you could get the while action skill cooldown increases your spell damage. That won't help your dragon judgment damage, but that will help the damage that your pixies do. But this is what I have. It doesn't really matter all that much. There's not anything that you can get that's all that good. Just focus on getting lightning damage and Spellshot power, or lightning damage and Clawbringer power. For your rings, these are fairly important. Mine are incredibly good. You want it to have spell damage main. I've tested having spell damage versus melee damage versus ability damage. Intuitively, spell damage should be better, and it is better because basically the, like I've mentioned 1,000 times, the spell blade pulls from spell damage and melee damage, but then some of that spell damage is also getting converted into melee damage, half of it. So you're basically getting double stat whenever you get spell damage. So you want to go for spell damage, and then you want to go for melee crit, because spell crit is not actually going to work for your melee swings or for your hammer. So definitely look for melee crit, and an alternative is to get action skill cooldown rate. This is going to be really good. This is going to help us reduce our cooldown of our our hammer by a pretty substantial amount. If you can't seem to get melee crit, just go for the action skill cooldown rate. If you had this even higher, you could probably throw out your hammer every 3 seconds, and that would be like an insane amount of fun. So feel free to look for that. I always go for a mood ring because I never have my ward being full because I'm using the Cursed Wit, and I just have 2 of these things. That's pretty much it. My gear is pretty near perfect. So again, we'll have the save file in my Discord, but honestly, you don't need to have perfect gear to be able to do a crazy amount of damage with this. The difference between having crazy, perfect gear and pretty bad gear, assuming that you still have, the spell blade and the class item, is probably like, I kill a boss in 1 hammer, it might take you 2 hammers, right? In terms of the enchants, you want to go for action skill start, increase spell damage, because spell damage OP, 40%. Action skill active, increase the lightning damage by 50%. And then action skill active elemental damage, and then action skill start damage dealt by 20%. You might be wondering, your action skill is very rarely active, so you're not really going to be benefiting this. Action skill active enchants last for 60 seconds. So what I do is I just throw out my hammer, pull it back right before I'm going to enter a boss, and then right before I go to the boss, I just throw the hammer out again. And then it's going to benefit from all of those previous buffs. If you're using the on action skill start increase spell damage by 40%, just make sure before you go to a boss that you do it within the 10-second window if you want your first hammer throw to benefit from this 40%. Alternatively, you could just swap to a different enchant, such as on spellcast, increase global damage by 15%, for example. That's pretty much it for the build. Now I just want to show you guys a normal Chaos 20. I've done the featured run like 10 times a day, so I'm kind of sick of it. So I'm just going to do a random normal run. And we're just going to go in and we're just going to play, dude. We're just going to have a good time. I forgot to swap my skill tree. I was going to go for Warcaster. Oh, I hate this floor, dude. I was going to go for Warcaster, but I guess that's not happening because I forgot about it. But, dude, oh my god, look how much fun that is. Oh my god, look how much fun that is. I'm going to be using the live wire. If I actually cared about what was happening and I wanted to do, like, a fast run, I would just use the pixies. But, dude, I've used the pixies, like, I hit that guy for 1 million, no big deal. I've been using the pixies so much that I'm just like bored of it, to be honest with you guys. So I would much rather use the live wire, kind of just for fun. But what's really nice about this build is that all kinds of things that you can buy from the altars are really, really good. So melee damage is going to benefit this build, spell damage, ability damage, elemental damage, etc. All of those are really good. So overall, the build is very, very versatile. You don't ever feel like you don't have something that you can do. You're not like reliant on the hammer, right? You still do really good damage with your gun. You still do really good damage just throwing the melee out. The melee can actually do way more damage than the hammer. I just don't really like using the melee that much. It's also very reliant on like getting a crit if it's going to be good or not. And also if you just get lucky with echo procs. I kind of forgot to talk about echo, but on your Spellblade, you want to have you want it to roll echo. Oh, look at this, dude. Oh, we love that, dude. Oh my god, that's so much fun. You want it to roll echo because that'll just help it do extra damage. It'll basically just do multiple hits of melee damage, which is really, really good. As you can see, my melee right there chained, and it killed that other guy, which is a really good reason to just run around with the live wire out all the time. What is this guy doing? Is that guy floating through the floor? What is this floor, dude? I did not plan this one. Also, crit damage benefits the build. I'm gonna just buy everything. Come here, idiots. These guys are making me run around in circles. I haven't done this floor in forever. I'm running like a weirdo. But as you can see, the gun damage is still pretty good. That's like without Buffmeister there, and we don't even have Pew on, and I'm missing a lot of rate of fire within the skill tree, which I don't even have set up. If you wanted to focus more on guns, you certainly could do that. You could get like SMG crit damage instead of melee, yada yada. But again, my goal was to make the ability do as much damage as humanly possible, so that's what we're doing here. I'm probably just going to cut until there's some actually good gameplay moments because I don't want the video to be like 20 minutes long. So yeah, floor was insanely boring. I'm glad I didn't make you guys sit through that, but this one will be pretty fun. I kind of want to just melee these guys a lot and see if they just get chain owned. That might be kind of fun. Where are you going? What is he doing? Alright, let's see. Get him chained up. I don't have my Buffmeister active. I could probably do that. I don't really like using the melee, if I'm going to be honest. It's so good. It's so good, I just don't like using it. I just don't like pressing the button. Alright, we'll hit him up. Alright. Oh my god, there's a bunch of guys. Taskmaster. Was that just my live wire? My live wire's owning. Look at that, dude. Look at that. You cannot put a price on how much fun it is to just throw the hammers. Look at this. Boop. Boop. Oh my god, I love it. I love it. I'm about to just stack all action skill cooldown rate just so I have it at like a 2-second cooldown, I swear. Alright, this floor isn't too bad. I don't know how much gameplay I'll get here, but we love throwing the hammers at the quartz. If there was a map full of quartz, that would probably be my favorite map. I'm not gonna lie. That's all I want to do, man, is just throw quartz. Also, if you're still watching right now, subscribe. I know that you're not subscribed already. Just do it, dude. Make me smile. I said that floor was gonna be good, and then I proceeded to run around for like 3 minutes. Couldn't find anything. Found a guy, and then I accidentally blew myself up with the barrel. So you know, that's how it goes. What did I just complete? I don't know what I did, but I did something. Proud of myself. I did something. Oh. Encounter clear, very epic. So now we are at the boss. I'm gonna use some pixies on the boss because live wire is certainly not great for bossing. What did we get? Oh, this guy. Dude, I don't like this guy. Everyone's gonna make fun of me because I don't know how to fight him. Alright, well, hopefully the build isn't too bad for it. I don't have my Cursed Wit active because I randomly died something, but oh, I didn't activate my... I always forgot to preempt. Oh my god, he actually got owned. Wait, what? He got kind of clapped, dude. The pixies are OP, I'm not gonna lie. The pixies are insanely good. But look, I got my Oath of Thunder up. Or not Oath of Thunder. I got my Awe up, 2 stacks. Oh, hey, I mean, I'm not complaining, okay? I'm not complaining. That was still pretty good. That was still good. My pixies are bullying him even though he's dead. Stop, he's dead. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already. If you haven't, you're trolling. Make me happy. Thank you very much. Plenty of more builds to come. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.